Welcome to Jazz Zone Together. Today, we welcome our world-renowned and Grammy-nominated trombone artist and overall creative artist, Steve Wiest, to join us for this Jazz Zone Together interview. To kick off our interview, I'll turn the mic over to Dick Dunscomb to interact with Steve and conduct the interview. Dick, it's all yours.
Thank you, Bob. And Steve, welcome. It's so good to see you, man.
Thank you. Likewise. Thanks for having me here, both Bob and Dick. And Dick, it was so nice to see you in December out at Midwest and your lovely wife. What a great hang that was. So it's great.
Yes, absolutely. So we usually start the interview by talking about your early years and what got you started and what led you to your career path as a professional musician. Can you give us a little bit of info about that?
Absolutely. I even wrote down some notes here because if I don't write down notes, I'm just going to be a tree of tangents and I'll get lost. It's how I operate. To keep myself honest here. So, starting out for me, I knew early on that it was going to be creativity of some kind. So I was just always creative. I was one of these little kids with his head in the clouds, walking into trees and I would sing my own little incidental music to my own personal movie as I was outside and just having a blast and always creative. I was always drawing something, making something, creating my own little board games. And in Woodridge, Illinois is where I went to elementary school. And it was a little tiny house. We were very modest income family, but in the basement we had this old rickety piano, and I would sit at that thing for hours. No piano lessons or anything, but I just loved the textures and the sounds. I did the thing where you push down the pedal, and it was epic. It was like a Flash Gordon episode or something. As I'd hit it and I'd sing into it, and so all these textures were happening all the time. So it was always about creativity. And then my parents divorced and my mother remarried and we moved down to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, which was quite a culture shift from Chicago to Mississippi, as you can imagine. So it led to a lot of things. As an aside, it led to me learning to imitate folks and imitate things, because when I first moved to Mississippi, I had an accent like that. And I said, fellas, it sure is hot. Where can a guy get a pop? And they said, boy, we're going to have to kill you, son. And I was, oh, no. So I had to learn a Southern accent really quick. And learn it I did. And, culturally being part of the Black community in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, about an hour from New Orleans, what a great advantage this was to creativity and music in general. That I think of the Black church and all kinds of things that influenced me. But in those early years in Hattiesburg now, and here I'm a young adult in middle school, my father, who was no longer living with us, was a weekend trombonist. So he was a weekend warrior. So I, idolized him because he was no longer with us. And that trombone sound and him, these little jam sessions he'd have in the basement back in the day, always stuck with me as magical. So the trombone was the thing I was always interested in. And then in the band program at school, as soon as they said, what instrument do you want to play? I said, well, I got to play trombone. And the band director was thrilled because he didn't have any trombone player. He goes, boy, you're the best in the world. Here you go. So I started out on trombone. The first record I ever owned was Irby Green's 21 Trombones, which to this day, I still am chasing that sound and what Irby did on that album. So it was a great influence. Then I learned about JJ and, Proof Positive just kind of knocked me out completely. And at the same time, I had started with my friend, John Fairbank, this great guitarist who's now a civil rights lawyer in Mississippi. I call him my own personal Atticus Finch. He is a great, great guy and a great lawyer. we had a band. We put together a garage band, and we played Chicago, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, ZZ Top, the Beatles, anything that was on the radio. And in the 70s, so I'm told, in the 70s, I don't remember, in the 70s, it was an incredibly diverse time on the radio. And that was, how we listen to music. So everything goes. So we were playing all this stuff. But as a trombone player and a so-so singer, I had to put horn parts on everything. So it kind of forced me to learn on my own how to orchestrate a little bit. So I started doing that, started orchestrating on my own. And the group had a great name. It was called the Tampa Token Hero Band. It was because of these Tampa cigars, Tampa wooden things. They had little wooden filters on them. My mother always thought it was marijuana. And I said, no, Mom, it's a cigar. And she never believed me. But that band was great fun. And I knew then from about the 10th grade, I had to be in music. I was drawing. I illustrated my school's yearbook and did a cartoon strip with a friend of mine, quite possibly the first Black hero in a cartoon strip in Mississippi, I think. I don't have any evidence to back it up, but he wrote the stuff and then I drew it. So yeah, I was into all kinds of things, but probably if we took it all and boil it down, interestingly enough, we were talking about Jimmy Pankow earlier, the great trombonist and writer with the group Chicago. He became kind of my ticket to, at the time, it was very difficult home life in Hattiesburg. My mother divorced again, and we were very poor. Although we didn't know it, it was one of those situations, my mom was so loving and heroic. We didn't know we were poor, but we were. So the thing that kind of got me through those difficult years was the music of Chicago and Jimmy in particular. So I would put on his albums. I'd put my speakers in the windows and I'd go out and be raking pine straw. We called the pine needles pine straw in Hattiesburg. And sweating and just loving Chicago and the music. And I'd look at those albums and say, man, I want to do that someday. And now, as fate would have it, I'm great friends with Jimmy. And it's the most surreal thing. I saw him a week ago, and I'm still the biggest fanboy in the world when I'm hanging out with him. So, yeah, that was kind of the early start.
Well, Chicago was my favorite when I was growing up too. So we must have been hearing some of that same stuff.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt.
So Steve, let's skip ahead a few years. You're traveling and performing with multi-year stints on the Maynard Ferguson band. Talk about your playing and writing for that band. Give us some of your prominent memories from those times.
Well, let's see. We'd have to qualify that with things that can be said on the air. And that's my friends and I from Maynard's band often say we should put out a book with a blue cover that has all the stories that cannot be told in public. And those are some of the best ones. But I should also qualify it with something that I forgot to mention, the mentors that I've been fortunate enough to have. So I wouldn't have gotten with Maynard's band if it had not been for a mentor named Raul Jerome in Hattiesburg, he ran for years the jazz program at the University of Southern Mississippi. And that's where I went to school on a $200 marching band scholarship.
Oh.
Was happy to get that. And Jimmy Carter and the Pell Grants got me to go to college, so I was able to do that. But that preparation, being with Raul Jerome, and he got me with Nelson Riddle and Bob Hope and all these people that would come through Mississippi, and I started to get my scene together. So when the opportunity came for Maynard's band, I was ready to go. I'd already been studying the music and playing along with all the recordings. I moved up here to Chicago, and after undergrad, and my cousin, Nick Drozdoff, who maybe you've worked with in Chicago, incredible lead trumpet player and jazz trumpet player, he got with Maynard, and then he recommended me. And at the time, Scott Bentall was going to get the call. He was this great lead trombonist in Chicago. And he turned it down because he had a steady gig, and they needed somebody quick because half the band had quit. And so they had my tape on the top of all the other tapes. And thankfully, Nick Drozdoff had said, send in something. We're going to start a tour in Chicago. So anyway, I got with the band. And that, I often say, has given me everything else I've had since, just being with Maynard and around him and the people. I can trace everything and everybody I know outside of my nuclear family to the fact that I was with Maynard Ferguson. He was that important to me in my career. So memories, what did I write over here? There was so many memories I thought I'd just mention. Well, you know, because he was Maynard Ferguson, he attracted people, heroes. My textbooks would show up at gigs, you know. That's where I met Slide Hampton and played with Freddie Hubbard and McCoy Tyner. And one time he comes backstage and Dennis de Blasio and I are backstage. We were roommates and for 3 years. So I think that qualifies us as each other's first wives, but that's another story. So we're backstage once in Maynard, and everybody who's on Maynard's band has an imitation of Maynard because he was very unique sounding individual. He comes back and says, yeah, fellas, would you like to meet Bill? And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, sure. I don't know who Bill is. We got on stage. It's Count Basie on stage. And he's, you know, at that time he was in his like a little Walmart wheelchair thing with the motor, you know. And he goes, hey, this is my trombonist here, Bill. I'd like you to go, oh, Mr. Basie, wow. And, you know, so moments like that where you get to meet your heroes. One that really sticks out was we had a saying on Maynard's band, never forget whose name is on the T-shirt, you know, because we would get really big egos. We're a bunch of young guys in our 20s, you know, and said, yeah, we're the best in the world, and they're all coming to hear me. And you forget that it's Maynard they're coming to see, and you guys are icing on the cake. So we got real full of ourselves one tour, and it was in the summer. It was really hot, and the bus broke down. So we had to make it to this big jazz festival. And so they got a yellow school bus. They had to replace our bus with just an old school bus. And we were like, well, how dare they? Don't they know who we are? We are Maynard Ferguson. And so we're on the bus and we're all upset and jaded. And so Maynard could tell that we were in this foul place. And he was such a good leader and such a good supporter of young people. What he did was just incredible. We didn't know that we were going to be sharing the bill with Dizzy Gillespie at this festival coming up. But Maynard did, and he and Diz were best friends. So he called ahead and said something along the lines of, yeah, you know, the band's a little upset. Could you come on and give them some trouble, give them a hard time? So we pull up into the parking lot. We don't even get off the bus. We're just like, wow, this is miserable. We hate this place. We don't like anything. And suddenly the door opens and this guy jumps up onto the bus. And I remember thinking, he looks a little bit like, what? It's Dizzy Gillespie. And he jumps up on the bus, and we had no idea he was there. And he goes, pardon me, gentlemen, would any of you have some valve oil that I could borrow? And all of us, the sax players, everybody found some valve oil. And said, here, Mr. Gillespie. So we all ran up there, and he kind of held court and told jokes and stories. And we were all just thrilled to be alive at that point. And there, almost daily, certainly weekly, there was something like that on Maynard's band, because it was just, and it fit me perfectly because it was just pure creativity 24/7. The show was up for grabs every night. We'd have a set list, but oh my gosh, Denny and I and Tim Reese, we would do vaudeville routines in the middle of the, I remember on this one tune, the Bebop Buffet, we're doing, And we stopped the band. And I said, so Tim, I went to the doctor the other day, and I said, doctor, it hurts when I do this. And Tim says, the doctor says, don't do that. So we put these ridiculous routines into the music, and Maynard, for the most part, always supported it and just kind of had this joyous vibe happening all the time, which was, the best. So when I think of Maynard memories, they're almost always something that makes me smile, and quite often has something to do with learning, through just being there, osmosis from my heroes. And what an education. That's why I always say I graduated from the University of Maynard Ferguson.
Well, you certainly have his heart and his method of teaching. And speaking of teaching, you ran the jazz program at a university in Wisconsin, and the next thing I know, you're at North Texas.
Yeah,
and you're having a professorship and directing the famed 1 O'Clock Band. What was that like, man?
That was very difficult even to describe fully in words. It was a full circle, surreal event. It really tied all aspects of my upbringing together into a career moment. Because back in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, when I was with Raul Jerome at University of Southern Mississippi, he has this wonderful way of, I imitate him too. He kind of talks out of the corner of his mouth like that. He said, Steve, you gotta check out the 1 O'Clock Band. Have you heard this Lab 75? Check this out, man. Leon Breeden and Lyle Mays. And he showed me this album. This is the first album that a student group had ever been nominated for a Grammy for. And it just, all the charts, of course, by the great Lyle Mays, just blew me away. I couldn't believe a university band sounded like this. So that's at the back of my mind. And when I'm on the road with Maynard, I meet this other guy from North Texas, Rich Madison. And you guys know Rich. He was a force of nature, a wonderful, wonderful man. And I just was drawn right to him. And we'd see him every once in a while as we were out performing. I said, Rich, man, I'm thinking about getting off the road. I think I need to go back to school and get my master's, and I want to raise a family. And he said, man, you need to go to North Texas, man. So he got me hooked up with Neil Slater, and I went and got my master's there. And, Neil became a mentor of mine and still is to this day. And so North Texas became this wonderful thing for me. And I got in Neil's 1 O'Clock Band. So when I went to North Texas as a faculty person, I started out teaching composition and jazz trombone. And I was over the moon to be around. It was Neil and Jim Riggs and Dan Hurley. It was the Justice League of jazz education, the Avengers. It was incredible. So I'm like a kid in a candy store at that point. And then Neil came up to me one day and says, look, I'm thinking about retiring. You want to do the 1 O'Clock? And what? Are you kidding me? So I had a year. It was the longest interview ever. I was the interim director for a year and interviewed for the position. And so I did a bunch of things. Like I figured I should write the hardest big band piece ever written and use that as audition material for the trombonist. So I wrote it, and to have a new opener or a new closer for the band, because we were going to do a big farewell thing for Neil and Jim Riggs. So this big celebration, the 1 O'Clock played debuted this tune. It was called Ice 9. And as fate would have it, that year when I started directing the band, that got nominated for a Grammy. And it was just this very difficult, exciting piece of music. No brag, just fact. I mean, it was designed to be that way. So yeah, working with those guys, I remember asking Neil once, I said, man, how do you teach this band? They sight read and it's perfect. I hear that, I go, well, what am I supposed to tell them? He goes, the more you listen to it, the more you'll be able to tell they're full of it. They don't know what they're doing. You'll have plenty to tell them, and then as time went on, I learned some things I could offer and just kind of decided, well, let me just try to take what Neil did and keep that ball going, just try to keep that happening. So it was an honor and a great joy to get to work with those students. I mean, the band is professional level and it gets to practice 4 days a week, every week, you know, so it can do impossible things. So I was writing for that group and directing it. I took them, we went all over the place, you know, to Ireland and England, and what else did we do? Went to the Grammys, and it was just great fun. And as you mentioned, I had a different approach than Neil. I had was my own version of running the band was I just kind of channeled what Maynard did and tried to bring some of that joy to what I did when I would direct the band. And man, what an honor, what a thrill. And then these guys just could play anything. And it was a big thrill to work with that group.
Well, you did it well. That's for sure. Now, some of your other big band performances included a Doc Severinsen band. Talk a little bit about your memories there and also share with us your new band and what's going on today.
Sure. Well, when I was teaching at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, a friend of mine from the North Texas program was with Doc Severinsen. And Doc, after the Tonight Show band, after the old Tonight Show with Johnny Carson ended, after that ended, he wanted to take the Tonight Show band on the road. And some of the guys didn't want to go. So, you know, like Tommy Newsom didn't do it and a couple other people. So they needed to be replaced. And I got the call to replace one of the guys. So I got to go out on the road, and here's 90% of the band is still the people who were on the Tonight Show. So it was Connie Condoli and Snooky Young, Ed Shaughnessy and Russ Tompkins, all the cats, all the guys were there, Ernie Tack. Who else? Ernie Watts, just an unbelievably packed band of superstars. For me, once again, just being around the people that I considered textbooks was a treat. Snooky was the gentleman of the universe, the ultimate mensch of all times, and just took me under his wing and was so sweet and nice to me. And the same with Connie Condoli. They were both, and they were huge heroes of mine. I remember when I listened to the Tonight Show and the theme song, the wait up, wait up, live up and beat up. There was this one moment where it said, wait up, get up, beat up, up. So I had this little chromatic thing going on. And at a certain point, Connie Condoli started putting this triplet thing in where it's going, beat up, down a half step, but he would go, and I used to listen to that on the show and go, man, check that out. So when we would play the theme song to open up Doc's shows on the road, and the first time that right behind my head, I heard, I couldn't play. I just like, whoa, Kate, you know, this looking, he goes, whoa, what are you doing? I just couldn't stand it. It was so cool. So yeah, just being around those guys and Doc himself with his very classy showbiz thing that he did so well, and that big giant sound, and some of the people he brought out. I remember we did a Christmas show where it added strings and stuff, and it was the Tonight Show band with Mel Torme. And yeah, so here we're doing the Christmas song with Mel Torme and Doc Severinsen. And after rehearsal, I'm walking across the street to the hotel. On one side of me is Doc, on the other side is Mel. And I'm thinking, this little kid from Hattiesburg, Mississippi is doing okay. You know, it was just, I was thinking, man, one of these things is not like the other. With the three of us walking across the street. Yeah. So it was moments like that. And every single one of them just taught me so much. Like I remember one time feeling like my face was going to fall off on the series of concerts we did with Doc. And I said, man, I don't know what the matter is, talking to Doc. And he goes, well, you know, there's no way to practice the gig, man. And I thought, oh, God, you are so right. It's so different when you're on the bandstand, because I'd been hitting the shed constantly getting ready for that tour. But when I was in the heat of battle, it was so different. So, little lessons like that you learn from being around your elders, the great statesmen of our music and art. And yeah, so that was a treat and an honor. And that was Doc's band.
And what about today with your band?
Oh man, I am having such a blast. Well, that's what the product placement is here. As you can see behind me, there it is. It's it has a name that, interestingly enough, has been pointed out to me by other folks in the jazz community that sounds like something else. It's called Vinyl Hampton. And somebody pointed out, gee, that sounds a lot like something else. It kind of does. That's the name of the group, and it's an all-star band that kind of combines all my musical loves into one thing. So I at the University of Denver, where I taught most recently, the Lamont School of Music, they had this wonderful program where, well, first of all, my salary was endowed salary, so they also endowed a research fund. And when they told me the amount, I couldn't believe it. And I said, whoa, could I research myself a band? They go, sure, that would be great. So it paid for this album and the previous one. And I was able to put together videos and all kinds of stuff from this research fund. I never would have been able to do it on my own. So when given that opportunity, I thought, well, what is the music I love? And it was everything. I said I'd started with Chicago, but I also loved Maynard, and I also loved jazz, all kinds of jazz, Gil Evans, this, that, and the other, all these things. So I said, well, let me just write what I like and see what happens. And then I said, who should I get to do it? And I just thought of some of my best friends in the music. So this is an all-star band. Everybody's been nominated for Grammys. Couple of guys, folks in Canada, have gotten the Canadian Country Music Awards. They've gotten those. They play with this country band up there called Gord Bamford, and they regularly get vocalist and guitarist of the year and all this kind of stuff. And the guitarist is somebody who was in my first 1 O'Clock band that I directed too. His name's Ryan Davidson, an amazing musician. The vocalist is Lisa Dodd, and she is somewhere between Aretha Franklin and Robert Plant is her voice. Has been described as honey and crushed glass. So it's this unbelievable voice. So yeah, it's kind of a modern version of Chicago with a little bit of Maynard and Tower Power and R&B and funky stuff thrown in. So and some Led Zeppelin too. So it's just a blast to write for. And my hope is to, take it on the road and maybe fit into that demographic or that niche that Maynard vacated when he passed, so go out and work at high schools and universities and festivals and do residencies, that kind of thing. So it's a blast, an exciting group.
Well, Steve, you have truly walked among the masters. And have made a name incredible for your own self. And we all are so appreciative of the work that you do and the way you do it. But I'd like to next take a step back to that little boy with the creativity aspect. You've done some incredible things. Science fiction, you've written a novel, you're a great cartoonist.
Well, thank you.
What's going on, man?
I'm blessed with a wonderful relationship now, a beautiful girl named Deborah Lamberty, and she says essentially I just never grew up. So that little boy, and I think she's right, that little boy is he's still in residency right now, and I find myself still doing the same thing, singing constantly, walking into trees as I'm thinking about an orchestration or something. So the creativity is just constant. I've never, ever had a roadblock or a writer's block. I don't even have to knock on wood because it just never turns off. So the creativity thing is just constant. So I decided at a certain point, I guess it's been about 10 years now, that I was just going to indulge everything. And so I decided on one of the projects I did, a friend of mine, Stockton Helbing, had done an album where he wrote a kind of a small novella, a little booklet to go with it. And I thought, what a great idea. So I started to write something for a project, and it ended up turning into almost 300 pages. So I thought, whoa, I can write a novel. So I did that. And then every step along the way, I've been still doing cartoons. You know, I wrote a monthly thing for Kendor Music for a while, and I illustrated some jazz books and things. And so the novel happened. I'm still drawing and getting into that. The next project I'll be working on at some point, probably in the fall, I put together some poetry for children. I always have loved Dr. Seuss and Mr. Rogers and stuff. So I'm going to make a poetry book collection for children, and I'm going to illustrate it kind of like Dr. Seuss kind of stuff, and see where that goes. So the creativity aspect, and I've always loved science fiction, so it was just a given I was going to write that at some point. And I've written a second book. The first book that I wrote, I'm going to turn into an Audible using my own voice. So I'm going to have fun with that, and I'll be able to imitate, go all the way back to learning how to speak Southern so I could survive, you know. I can use that for different voices in the book. And so I'm going to make an Audible version of it. And I've heard it likened to the old thing that you would see in a circus act or vaudeville, with the guy who would spin plates, and the stick with the plate and spin it. And I know you guys have seen that. And the trick is you get all these plates going, and one of them starts to wobble, and the audience, oh, it's going to fall. He runs and spins that plate and comes over. So you keep all these plates spinning. And the cool thing about it that I found is that they kind of refresh each other. So I'll be working on a chart for big band or something, and I'll get kind of tired, and I'll say, yeah, you know, this is really a dumb piece of music. So I'll take a break and go write something about science fiction, or draw this, or work on that, or some kind of graphics for a website or something. And then I come back, and the chart just writes itself. It's been refreshed. So all these creative endeavors kind of keep each other fresh, which is really fun. So I'm just doing them all. A big thing that'll be coming up, there's a wonderful program in the area, Mundelein High School, and I'm gonna let them perform this new stuff that I'm writing for my guest artist stuff when I go out and play with a high school or a university. I decided to write up a book of 10 pieces that are all informed by the world's cheesiest space opera that I'm writing. So it's called Groove Quest, Teaching the Galaxy to Swing. So it's all these episodes, and I made it, purposefully just crazy, over the top, cheesy. But each piece is going to be about a character or an event in that. So we're going to make a video with his high school band, and use that for my whole guest artist stuff. So it's a creative circus going on here in Wiest world. I can tell you that.
Well, I know you love interacting with students, and that's certainly Mundelein is one of the best groups out there. They're an incredible.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to working with them. That's going to be a blast.
Yeah. So you've recently moved to Chicago.
Yep.
What else is going on there for you?
As you well know, this is such a hotbed for music of all types, and creativity of all types too. And now that the pandemic is hopefully getting to a manageable place, all of that will start kicking back in again. But even in the midst of, I moved here last June. It's been almost a year. Right off the bat, all these opportunities came up, and I just had to write a couple of them here. Reggie Thomas, the great pianist, who's been working out at DeKalb for a while, took over for Ron Carter. I've known Reggie forever, and I moved into town. He goes, "Hey man, I hear you're in town. You want to make a record?" What? So one of the first things I got to do was record with Reggie. And, he is a genius and a beautiful, beautiful person. So that was great. Then I get a call from Jeff Lindbergh, said, could you play with Chicago Jazz Orchestra? I said, well, yeah, because way back in the day when I started with Maynard, I played with the members band when it was Jeff and Steve was still around, and Scott Bentall and a lot of other folks out of Fitzgerald. So he announced on the mic, and now coming back, he's played 2 gigs with us. The last one was 40 years ago, and he introduced me. So I get to play with Jeff's group and the Chicago Jazz Orchestra. It's just incredible. So that gives me my big band fix. Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned, the Groove Quest thing with Mundelein. And it's just a beautiful base of operations, because nowadays you can live anywhere and still do all this wonderful stuff. And that's what I'm doing here in Chicago. And Chicago's always felt like home to me. I'm a huge Cubs fan. They're going to the World Series this year. I don't know if you know that. This is the place to be. I'm right now. Deborah and I live just almost walking distance to Wrigley Field. So I couldn't be happier about that. And so life is great here in Chicago, man. I'm thrilled.
That's terrific. Well, they're sure lucky to have you, and we'll put that up on our website. That we heard it first from Steve Wiest.
You heard it right here. Shock the world.
So as you probably know, the people that watch these videos are jazz performers, jazz educators, students wanting to do what Steve Wiest did. What advice could you give to an aspiring jazz artist in that category?
Oh man, there's so many valuable things that I've been fortunate enough to hear and pick up from my mentors. And one thing that seems common with all of them is to really, in an honest way, study the music from its source, to learn from the great masters about the style and improvisation and the language and vocabulary. So learning the music and studying it is at the heart of the matter. And when you have that and you are with a mentor or a series of mentors like I had, your teachers, you just soak up everything, learn everything you can from them with respect, with love, and be around them and try to pick up all you can. And then suddenly you're a shaman. You're considered like this magic person because you have all this knowledge. And then you can tell them, you don't have to tell them where you got it from. You can say, well, it's just natural. I grew up with it, man. I don't expect you to understand. It's just a thing that I can do. But so my advice would be is practicing. You have to get your 10,000 hours in. And love what you do. If you love the music, if you love pursuing the music and the art, then do that. And if you want it, you will be successful. So it's a matter of love, respect, and practice. A lot of practice, man. I'm at a place in life now that I finally understand what one of my other mentors, Slide Hampton, told me once. He had just gotten a Grammy, so I tried to give him a compliment, and he never took a compliment. He was so humble. And I said, I got him this time. I said, Slide, man, congratulations on that Grammy. It must be great. It must be so exciting at this point in your career to get an accolade like that. And he goes, yeah, I am excited at this point in my life. And I thought, I got him. He goes, yeah, because now I think I finally know what it is that I need to practice. Man, so that, to me, if Slide was like that, and if Dizzy was like that, then that's the key: is practicing and loving every minute of it. And what a cool thing! That's a fun thing to do.
Amen.
Amen. Indeed.
You know, this has been a fabulous interview, Steve, and I've been looking so much forward to it. And I know that the people that are going to be watching it are going to gain a ton of information. And on behalf of all of them and myself and Bob, thank you so much. And please keep doing what you're doing, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much. And thank both you guys and all that you're doing. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Steve, thank you so much for being a part of this. What a world of experience you've shared with us today, and I know our viewers will really take it seriously and enjoy what you've presented.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. It's so nice to be able to give back now and then.
To our viewers, thanks for joining us for this Jazz Zone Together interview. Please check out the entire library of interviews. We know you'll find them all of real value. Watch for updates as we're adding new interviews regularly. Thanks for joining us. Thank you.